Hey, what comes to mind when you hear the term bar exam? For many of you legal types out there, I know you may have shuddered just at the thought of that. Data shows that around 40% of people who take the bar exam to become lawyers fail. But this week, the Oregon Supreme Court unanimously approved an optional plan that would let folks skip the bar exam and still get a license to practice law. Oh, yes, they did. And that's our big story tonight. I have two sisters who are lawyers in Washington State, and when I first heard about this, I said, "You got to be kidding me." I remember how intense it was for them, but it was hard, but it made them better. Isn't that the way it's supposed to be? At least I think they did. They're awesome now. They're fantastic lawyers. So how crazy is that people can skip the bar exam? But it turns out there's actually quite a bit of thought that went into the decision, and a lot of smart people think it is going to make for better lawyers. So let's dig in. Starting in May of next year, a program called the Supervised Practice Portfolio Examination, that's a mouthful, will be given in Oregon. Law school graduates who choose to go that route will be able to practice in Oregon without taking the bar exam. Instead, they'll have to prove themselves by actually doing the job that they studied for. Requirements include 675 hours of practice under the supervision of a licensed Oregon attorney. That's a little over 4 months of 8 hours a day, 5 days a week. That number was not plucked out of the sky, by the way. That's understood to be the general amount of time that someone would spend studying for the bar exam. Next, they'll have to submit a portfolio of their work. It'll be made up of 8 different projects. Each one of those has to be delivered to a board of bar examiners who will give it a thumbs up or thumbs down grade. It's the same way that current bar exams are graded today. Now, I know that many of you are sitting back on this Friday night thinking to yourselves, here's another example of Oregon softening the rules, and it will degrade the very important jobs that lawyers do day in and day out. Well, we wondered about that ourselves. So we spoke with the dean of the Willamette University's law school, Brian Galini, who helped craft the new program. He put it to us like this: would you rather have a lawyer who can pass a test or one who's already done hundreds of hours of the actual work that you're now asking them to do?
It reminds me of like, do you remember when BlackBerries were out? And the iPhone came along and everyone said, oh, the iPhone's not gonna go anywhere. I'm tied to my BlackBerry. That was the phrase. But who has a BlackBerry anymore? I think today's bar exam is the BlackBerry, and what this is the iPhone. And we're in that period of resistance where it's like, no, we're so used to doing it this way and accepting it this way that I'm tied to my BlackBerry. But I think it's important to remember as we move into a different line of thinking, what we're doing now, it would be the equivalent if we said to doctors, look, just draw out how you would do the surgery. I don't want you to practice. Or to pilots, like just think about flying the plane, or like just, write that out, but don't fly it. And so you and I show up for our flight and the pilot's like, it's my first flight, but don't worry. I've written about flying and I've taken some multiple choice. I haven't actually flown the plane, but you'll be fine. That's what we do in law right now. When if people really focused on what this current exam is doing, I think they'd be far more alarmed that they have the attorney who passed this as opposed to the attorney who's going to be asked to do the sorts of things that the SPPE is going to ask candidates to do.
So that SPPE is the acronym for the new program, by the way, Supervised Practice Portfolio Examination. Galini points to some big questions about the bar exam that have recently come to light, especially when it comes to equity. Data from the American Bar Association in 2021 showed that broadly there's a 15% difference between white prospective lawyers passing the bar compared to prospective lawyers of color.
Does this bar exam protect the public? And so, well, in order to know that, we got to know what we're testing. Well, presumably we're testing minimum competence, but as it turns out, there is no evidence-based definition of minimum competence. Oh, well, that's concerning. Well, what are we doing? Well, we're using multiple choice and essay questions that are closed book and timed. And so, well, okay, if we've got racially disparate results, we've got no definition of minimum competence, surely multiple choice and short essay closed book, surely that matches what lawyers do. Well, no lawyer completes a multiple choice question or completes a closed book short answer essay in their practice.
And then there's the cost of the bar exam. Galini tells us that typically the courses to prep for the bar run around $4,000, and that's after law school graduation. It's around 6 months total of studying, taking the test, and waiting for the score with little to no income on the side, probably for most people, while they have to continue putting food on the table and keeping a roof over their head.
Ask any graduate who has taken the bar exam whether they felt like the second they walked across the graduation stage, they were ready to practice law. And the answer overwhelmingly is no. And all of those things leads to one question, which is, why are we doing it this way?
And he says that led to the creation of this program. It's taken shape over the past 3 years, finally receiving approval from the Oregon State Supreme Court on Tuesday of this past week. Once it begins in May of next year, it will be open to all graduates of law schools across the country that are accredited by the American Bar Association, which is great. But Galini says one of the weaknesses of the new program is that people who go through it instead of taking the bar exam will only have a license to practice right here in Oregon. And that is a big difference. Those who pass the traditional bar exam can practice in any of these states in orange, depending on your score. These are states that have adopted the so-called uniform bar exam, which is scored out of 400. The bar exam in Oregon is not going away. Students can still take that one if they want. The cut score for the traditional bar exam is 270. Score lower than that in Oregon, and you do not get a license. You do get to take the test again, though.
We see real issues with trying to compete in the licensure space, and by we I mean the state of Oregon, with every other state that accepts that portable score, because you're not really giving that candidate the ability to say, well, we want to focus you on the issues in Oregon. Now, one way to think about that is, okay, now candidates have fewer options. That's kind of the negative and the drawback. But the positive way of thinking about that is if we can encourage students to think about how they would leverage their licensure in state sooner in their law school experience, I think that gives us a better shot at attorney retention. I personally, taking my committee hat off and putting my dean hat on, I see a lot of students who want the flexibility that a portable license provides. And I think we got some work to do to convince them that, hey, you should spend 675 hours as opposed to just you could bang this out in 2 days. So I think we got some work to do on that front.
I think a lot of lawyers would agree with him. Galini says that while Oregon is the first state to implement something like this, we're not all that unique in the idea anyway. Several other states are on the path toward making this a reality as well. California is likely next. The state of Washington is looking at multiple pathways towards a law license instead of the bar exam. Wisconsin and New Hampshire have special licensing programs. Maine, Nevada, Utah, North Dakota, Georgia, and Minnesota, they're all considering licensure reforms as well. So what about you? What do you think about this new program that allows lawyers to skip the bar exam? What are the pros and cons that come to mind? Let us know, will you? You can email us right here at thestory@kgw.com. You could also call and leave a voicemail. The number is 503-226-5090.